Hello there, chat. Welcome to the Torchlight Infinite live stream. This will be hopefully the first of many. So, welcome. Happy New Year to you all. What are your New Year's resolutions? How have you guys been doing? During our ongoing beta test, we have been overwhelmed and humbled by the outpour of kind support and passionate attachment from our dear community who knew people would like our game. Meanwhile, we have also heard a lot of feedback from the community, and today we would like to take this opportunity to select and answer certain questions from you that were most frequently raised by the community. So I'll be your host for today to represent the views of and information from the game's developers. It does bear stressing that a lot of work is still ongoing and still subject to massive changes and even overhaul, so please be aware that not every detail will be shared. And so today, first of all, in our first section, we're going to be diving into some of the character builds for all four classes during the earlier levels, as well. This is also intended to help out some of our new players into either this genre, mobile games in general, or just Diablo-like dungeon crawlers. So we're going to be sharing some of our builds. These are by no means intended to be optimal. We encourage experiment. In fact, that's one of the greatest perks, I guess, or interest points of our game, is that allows a great deal of customization for all the builds the way you want to play. And I think that's kind of what separates us from a lot of games. So without further ado, we're going to jump into all the classes one by one. All of these classes are set at level 69 for simply for the reason that before level 70, all of the talent respecs are for free, and after level 70, they will begin to cost tokens. So we have our characters at 69, which is when you can still freely experiment with whatever build you like. So we're going to dive into all four, starting with the Berserker. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Right on. So here we have Berserker, Rayhan the Berserker. He is your very average run-of-the-mill, bread and butter warrior build, the man with a huge axe and even bigger shoulder pauldrons. And his build today will be mostly focusing on, well, damage dealing, but with the major components being physical plus fire damage. As we can see here, this is the basic skill combo that we're going with, and the main pillar of this build is the Hammer of Ash ability, which deals weapon damage and converts 50% of physical damage to fire, has a 25% chance to inflict burn, ignite, and also gives base maximum 1 true strike charges when this skill does ignite enemies. This is going to be our main skill, and you're going to see why we selected this as the main component of our damage kit. This is supported, once again, by all these 5 skills. We already saw the melee physical damage, as well as added fire damage here. And Steamroll, which it supports skills in the sense that it lowers your attack speed, but gives you extra damage and skill radius. And you can see from the percentages that this is a huge boost to all of our melee damage. Fire Explosion supports skills by giving them extra fire damage and supporting ignite damage. So all of these are centered around fire and physical damage, basically turning you into a juggernaut, unstoppable, and dealing just tons of damage. Thrill also is an important component of all of our physical classes, as you can see in all of the builds that we're going to share today. Each stack gives 7% attack speed increases up to 28%, which is massive. And we're going to go into the gameplay. Pretty soon we're going to be showing off how this build works, what it can do in some of the higher level Netherrealm dungeons. And as a lot of players, okay, so also, it bears mention that all of these talents are also focused on damage, fire damage, critical strike, as well as a bit of harden, just to give you that little bit extra survivability. And for the bigger talent nodes, the big talent nodes that you selected, 10 points and 20 points. For 10 points, we have hardened, which is damage reduced by 15%. It's just a flat-out damage decrease, which is great. And elimination, which allows your auto attacks to eliminate enemies under 18% life on hit, which is essentially an execute for most mobs. And that adds up really quickly and gives you much better efficiency when running dungeons, when farming massive amounts of mobs. And here we also have Incineration, 30% extra fire damage when enemies are severely injured. By severely injured, this game defines it as when an enemy takes in a single hit more than 35% of its maximum life. So this kind of just rolls on top of all the other damage components that you have for yourself, in the sense that if you deal a big hit, you can do even more damage on top of that. Here we also have Incinerate, 50% physical damage converted to fire damage, 50% cold damage converted to fire damage, which doesn't really matter for us, but damage ignores enemy fire resistance. Only fire damage can be dealt. We had a previous talent where it increases, where the expense of getting more damage is to increase the resistance of the mobs that are being hit, while this talent allows you to ignore them altogether. So these two mesh really, sync really well. And for the talents trees, we will be picking from the God of Might and God of War, very your cookie cutter decent builds suited for physical classes. And we've for the other talent tree, we've picked the Brave, the Valiant. And next we'll look at some of the hero traits that we've picked as the last part of our customization. For the Anger tree at level 16, there's not much to say about that. During Berserk, triggers Burst on hit, which Burst is also just more flat-out AoE damage. Frenzy Furious gives you 2% critical strike rating for every 1 current rage. Rampaging at level 48 has Burst now has 2 support slots, and we'll be showing you both of those. Here's the first one, which is support skills on hit. Supported skills have 170% extra crit, and the second one is 390% extra crit rating, which is fairly insane. All of these added together gives you, once again, massive damage. And very soon we will be seeing these skills in action. So all of these builds are intended to give you melee, fire, and AoE damage, while also, since being a melee class, the Berserker is has a shorter reach. So the lava fractures that you used during the ignition element compensates for that to a certain degree, as you will see here.
Never felt better. I heard the call of the...
Okay, that wasn't intended to happen.
Wimp. Never felt better. A hearty Valga battle indeed.
So as we can see from that, we had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning, but in the earlier levels of the Berserker, the initial focus / ability that you get is fairly awkward during the early game when its attack area is very small and you have a really slow attack speed. But once you've defeated Ajito on the high tower and you've returned to the hideout at around level 5, Liv will give you the Hammer of Ash ability, which works much better and syncs up really well with other skills. And going into the next map, we will showcase that.
Never felt better. A hearty Valga battle indeed.
Woo! So that was a really good run. Next, we'll be taking a look at our next class, Reno the Divine Shot. So Carino will have Ice Shot as his default go-to active skill. This deals 154% weapon damage and also deals cold damage. So cold is it's a huge component of what we're basing the entire build off of. And then we have spread shots supporting it. We have +2 projectiles, which allows you to shoot in an arc, to shoot in a cone in front of you, giving you much better AoE capabilities. Thrill, once again, just like the Berserker, allows you to have faster attack speed when projectiles give 28% projectile speed and deal additional flat damage. So that supports basically your AoE mowing down the opponent kind of build as well. Mark has a 40% chance to mark enemies which take additional damage. And on top of that, Ice Shot also deals 28% more damage to it. So this might not be seen in the description as explicitly, but it deals actually a lot more damage, more than the description might say, to your enemies. Added ice damage just gives a flat 28% bonus to your physical shots.
There are no eternal thrones.
Next, let's go into the talents.
Everlasting.
We are going into the Goddess of Hunt, the Hunt tree with Arrow, Hurricane, and 3 birds with 1 stone, and Marksman. So most of these points are going to be focused on projectile damage, projectile speed, which also translates to damage, as you will see later on, and thrill-related talent nodes that increase your attack speed. So going into these big talent nodes, Arrow, Hurricane, 100% of the projectile speed bonus is also applied to projectile damage, plus 30% flat also. 3 birds with 1 stone gives you even more projectiles, and pretty soon you'll see in the gameplay just how efficient this is in terms of basically the arc that we shoot out covers like a quarter of the screen, so it's really good for taking down large numbers of mobs, even though we're doing this ranged build. Wind Shot, projectile damage increases with the distance traveled, dealing up to 30% additional damage to distant enemies, which is basically the equivalent of Snipe in some other games. And Euphoria enhances Thrill by giving it 1 extra stack, and 1% chance to avoid damage altogether for each stack of Thrill, and plus 4% damage. With the last part, I guess the 4% damage isn't all that relevant, but it's mainly a survival skill, just to give yourself a little bit of that more passive survivability on top of the aura that you can get.
It's my duty to cleanse all evil
going
and
into some of the
impurities.
hero traits. First, we have at level 16, Ammo Expert, which is basically you can't really choose it, so that's the go-to for level 16. Level 32, we have Moving Reload plus extra projectile damage, Ammunition for +1 special ammo slot, and we will be utilizing that mechanic to its utmost potential in this build, as you will see fairly soon. Plus 10% chance for extra ammo. And Landslide gives you, while Magic Shot is active, projectiles consume your entire magazine. For each type of special ammo reloaded, because you shoot the entire magazine, you reload the entire magazine on your next shot, and so you gain a massive damage increase, basically 8% times at least 2 or 3 extra projectiles. So that's kind of massive. These two are the abilities that will support your critical, that will support your main shot ability. And after that, I think the entire strategy based around this build is basically to go for big AoE damage, as well as maintaining distance, and also just giving a slow and frozen effect to crowd control a bit. And next we'll be looking at some of the gameplay from the build that we've just established.
It's your honor to be judged by a member of the Herman family. Violence is not the answer to all, but it is the answer to your sins. I shall purify your tainted soul. Your reign of evil ends here.
All right, so that was a very effective map grinding build. As you can see, most of the mobs don't even really get within arm's reach. You can't be meleeed at all, and the freeze effect basically keeps everybody at bay, and while also attacking bosses, you can just basically dash behind them all the time, deal backstabs, and basically you're untouchable for this build. It's a very effective and fairly safe, much more safe than the melee build that we just saw for the Berserker, and it's just a flat out really decent map grinding build. The initial Ice Shot has control, and with decent effectiveness of added damage combined with Thrill's effect to increase attack speed, this makes you a very capable shooter ranged class, and overall just deals tons of damage. Okay, going into the next map, we'll see some more of that.
Violence is not the answer to all, but it is the answer to your sins. It's your honor to be judged by a member of the Herman family. I shall purify your tainted soul. It's your honor to be judged by a member of the Herman family. I'll need some time.
Alright, so you can see that was extremely effective. The character is also moving up really close to the boss for that extra sweet damage. It's also bears mention that Thrill has 3 seconds of basic duration, but it can be stacked 3 times initially. And using support skill Thrill to get this buff, it consumes the support skill. When it's combined with core talent Euphoria, Thrill can provide a damage buff on top of that. So next, we're going to take a look at the third class, Frostfire Mage Gemma. Alright, so for her build, we're going to be focusing on the damage spell Split Firebolt. It's an extremely useful spell when combined with the Surge mechanism, which is basically the caster equivalent of the Thrill effect for physical classes, but on top of that, Surge also gives you mana recovery, which enables you to deal consistent damage. We'll look at the skills first. So we have Split Firebolt, which we have by default. It's one of the earliest skills that you can get in the game. And also Fire Explosion, which is unlocked at level 7. Split Firebolt deals Spellfire damage, but it also reduces damage dealt by Split Firebolt by 50%. And contrary to what you would usually think of when thinking of a Firebolt spell being single target, this actually deals very good AoE damage. It explodes on impact as well as branching out 3 other smaller Firebolts. It's supported by Fire Explosion and Fire Piercing, which gives you flat out fire damage increase, and also fire resistance decrease to enemies by 25.5%, which is really essentially the same thing. Wind projectiles, once again, like all range classes, you want to have this for the increased projectile speed. And enhanced ailment, which is kind of sort of special in this regard because we're trying to use Gemma's ability to ignite enemies to deal additional dot damage. By here, we see ailment damage being defined as bleed, ignite, shock, and poison. But in this game, on top of increased ailment damage, there's also another different effect that increases all the sustained damage over time effects. So essentially, there's damage multipliers that stack on top of each other for your DOTs, for your dots. And going into the talent trees, we're going with God of Knowledge and Goddess of Darkness. The reason of which we chose God of Darkness will be more clear very shortly. We have here for one of the bigger talent nodes, Pulsing Shard, for your spells to have a 30% chance to grant Surge on hit. Surge, as I mentioned earlier, it increases your mana restoration and deals additional spell damage based on the effect level. It's just a flat-out caster, very important caster property that you want to keep on. And Beacon gives you flat-out 30% spell damage at 30% additional costs, which matters less since you have Surge on at all times to basically give you back that mana. And here in the talent tree, we are mostly focusing on prioritizing spell damage, maximum mana, and surge-related talent nodes. Metamorphosis gives you 120 maximum mana, and 20% taken of damage taken goes to mana. So this is once again a survival talent that we just pick for that extra survivability. Torrents gives you, when Surge is removed, -1 to a Surge level. What this means is usually when Surge runs out of the timer runs out, the entire uptime runs out, you lose the effect entirely. But now what it does is it only removes one single stack. So it gives you much better Surge uptime. For hero traits, at level 16, Fusion Form, the default go-to, where basically the mechanics that you've been accustomed to from level 1 to 15 all just goes away, and you gain fusion energy instead of fire and ice. At 32, at 48, we get Frostfire Strength. When dealing damage, it basically fire increases ice damage and ice increases fire damage at 48. Then we get Fusion Body at 66. We picked Fusion Body. Your fire spells can freeze targets, and your cold spells can ignite foes, and 8% of physical damage taken goes into fire damage and ice damage, plus you get 2 additional fusion energy limit. I think at the end of this, at the end of the entire talent build, you get basically 6 stacks of fusion energy, which also gives you flat and very decent damage increase. So we're going to dive straight into the Nether Realm and see what this talent does for us.
Is that all you've got? Not bad.
So I think the
But
first thing
too
you might
bad
notice
you met
is the
me.
massive, the damage, the flat damage that you see from this build just hits like a truck, and basically with Firebolt combined with the Surge mechanism and Ignition ailment damage, the damage over time, the Firebolt can deal some serious damage, and especially to mobs that are clumped tightly together, because they take both damage from the initial explosion as well as the branching off smaller fire blasts. And also a bit of detail on Surge is that the basic duration is 4 seconds. It gives you 35% extra spell damage and 200% mana restoration at level 20. So going into the next map,
Ant, meat boot. There's no escape for you. Is that all you've got?
very short
Not
and sweet
bad.
battle. And as you
But
may have
too
noticed
bad you
in
met
the video that we
me.
just saw, at one point we touched this shrine that was called the Statue of War, and it triggered this God of War trial effect. That's something that happens in the Netherrealm dungeons, is where it's one of the random shrines that you touch, and that the effect of touching these shrines, these trials, is you get a countdown on top of your head, during which time, during the time of the countdown, you basically build up these levels by killing enemies that gives you loot at the end once it expires. And also during the countdown, with more enemies that you kill, you gain enhanced abilities, more projectiles, and larger area of effect for your AoEs. All right, so the next and final class hero that we have, Yuga, the Space-Time Witness. We're diving into this build. And similar to Ice Shot, we will be mostly using ice damage and focusing on that as well. But Yuga is also very heavily reliant on his class ability, which is his Shadow Clone, to deal effective damage. So we're going to see how that kind of it has a little bit of a ramp-up time, and we're going to see how that takes effect. So the basic active skill we're using is Ice Lances, and supported by wind projectiles. As you see, once again, for all range classes, it's just very effective. It gives you a faster projectile speed and deal additional projectile damage. Ice Piercing, same as Fire Piercing. You reduce the cold resistance of enemies, just gives you flat damage. These are all very cookie cutter builds. Control spells, supported spells have minus 100% critical strike rating. Basically, you cannot crit, but you deal 34% spell damage on top of that. And then for efficient cast, supported skills have reduced mana cost and have 26% extra cast speed. This makes most of his spells very handy to cast. Freeze chance, you gain additional cold damage once again, and an 18% chance to freeze enemies.
Someone asked me how was magic used. Did you see my hairstyle? I got no hairspray.
Headed into talents. At 10 and 20, most of the talent points are going to prioritize spell damage as number one, and then cold damage and slow related talent nodes, because of the fact that unlike Gemma, Yuga has less opportunities to freeze and debuff enemies, so you kind of really need to use slow to your advantage. Here we're choosing Beacon, 30%, like all caster classes, you get 30% extra spell damage at more cost. Talent nodes, we have Thawing Strike, applies a stack of slow and freezing a target, minus 6% cold resistance per stack of slow. And it bears mention that while slow cannot be stacked, the 6% enemy cold resistance does stack. So you can essentially reduce all resistances of your foes all the way down to 0. So that's very effective for clearing elite and tougher mobs. Lord of Darkness gives you 1 stack of slow on nearby enemies. It slows everyone around you and makes them take 15% more cold and chaos damage, which works very well once you have your clone abilities rolling. Hero traits, level 16, Space-Time Illusion, which allows your clone to move around with you, entirely altering your gameplay style at 32. We have the field effect, and then 48, Space-Time, we pick Space-Time Resonance, and after that, Mysterious Contact. Spells cast will reduce your mana equal to the cost of your main skill. Each time your clone uses your mana, you gain 5% of your spell damage up to 25. So all of these additive effects add to pretty massive astronomical numbers by the end of everything you do.
Standing right here is the wisest one in the land, the genius scientist and wizard with incredibly rare talent, Yuga.
All right, going into the Netherrealm.
This was also in my plan. I haven't even given it my all yet. This was also in my plan. A powerful opponent. Shame that they're a little dumb.
As you can see, that by the time we got to the boss, we already had the illusion running at pretty high stacks of your abilities. So by that time, you already have massive damage increase.
I haven't even given it my all yet. This was also in my plan. Not yet. I haven't even given it my all yet. A powerful opponent.
That was so
Shame
fast we
that they're a
barely got to
little
see
dumb.
the boss's abilities, basically. Well, anyway, for Yuga, once you have the illusion running, it's basically a cakewalk from there. So similar to Ice Shot, the initial Ice Lances have crowd control abilities, as well as AoE, because they jump from one enemy to the next and deal extra damage when hitting enemies on Frost Pool. It's an excellent map grinder when combined with Surge and Frost Pool skills. So Surge was originally an upgradable buff, and it will be fixed at level 10 when Core Talent Compressed Path is selected, unless it's affected by other affixes. And there's also a chance to freeze when hitting a target with cold damage. All right, so that's it for the 4 classes and all of the builds that we'll be introducing to some of the newer players if you're not familiar with the genre. And but as you might have noticed, for a lot of our talent trees, we've just left the 3rd talent block completely open, so they are subject to your experimentation, and you can do whatever you want with it. This game is highly encourages experimentation with all the builds for maximum playability. It is extremely fun in that regard, and we recommend everybody to give them a try. So next, we will be picking some questions from Discord, some of the most frequently asked questions that people have been addressing to us, and it will be as follows. All right, first question, is there a limit to the amount of players allowed in a closed beta? And the answer is no. Currently, we do not have any limit planned. We are not Final Fantasy XIV. We have not encountered any server capacity issues as of present. And but we may evaluate our stability as greater numbers of players join the closed beta. But currently, no limit. Does progress sync between Android and iOS devices? Yes, progress is synced across platforms. You may log into your account from any device. And on top of that, we are also planning a PC release. So to be expected sometime, I don't know, later this year, maybe. We're not committing to anything, but know that it is coming. Are party modes available during the closed beta? I'm assuming this is asking about multiplayer, and yes, party modes are currently planned for future releases. It's not available currently, but it'll be there. How do I learn more skills? Well, some skills are earned throughout the main quest. Other skills may be purchased from the skill merchant in your hideout. You get most of them naturally, I think, as level progresses. What is the penalty for dying in Torchlight Infinite? There is none, at least for the early stages of the game. At higher levels, beyond 70, I believe, you will lose some of your EXP upon death. Using a revival token will eliminate the XP penalty altogether. Why does my mana bar appear gray, and why does low mana show on the screen when I try to use a skill? Well, that's one of the UI bugs that we're still trying to fix. It's something that will be resolved in a later release. Actually, no, just kidding. This is actually one of the features of our game in the sense that the mana bar appearing gray is indicative of a portion of your mana that's been sealed whenever you choose certain auras, imbue skills, and triggered skills. They require that a certain amount of your maximum mana be reserved, be put on reserve essentially, and pretty much be locked. Because we want to allow players to need to make a tactical strategic choice between choosing active skills and not spamming them all day long once their mana exceeds a certain threshold. So basically, if you find that too much of your mana is sealed by these skills and are unusable, consider connecting some support skills such as cost conversion and restrain, though, to lower the mana cost so that you can spam your abilities to your heart's content while also having these passive skills be active. What should I do if I can't get up past a certain Netherrealm difficulty? Well, this is a common occurrence. People have been reporting that our game is fairly difficult at the higher levels in Netherrealm, and they do exponentially scale. So don't get down on yourself if you can't clear a certain difficulty. You can go back to an easier setting, collect your gear, upgrade your equipment, and then come back and tackle some of the more difficult Netherrealm levels after taking the necessary precautions. Or you can just work on better skills, better builds. And as always, there's a massive, unlimited amount of basically experimentation and the ways you can build, customize your play style. So if there's a certain level that you can't get past, if there's, for instance, too much ranged mobs, you can customize and tailor build your own character to tackle those specific issues and get past it. So yeah, we encourage experimentation. Go for it. All right, taking some questions from chat right now. All right, we're looking at it. So one of you is asking, do we have emulator and controller support? Emulator support, we do not have currently plans for any emulator support. But as for controllers, we do have controller mapping available as of right now. Yes. Alright, so here's the deal. Some people can't find certain quest-giving NPCs, and our solution for that, the easiest, is use Town Portal. After that, go to the world map, and select the chapter where that NPC quest is found, and then there's a reset button, basically, which allows you to see that NPC again. So that's the easiest solution for that. And will there be auto-pathing and auto-battle? Well, no, on both of those fronts. This is an ARPG, first and foremost, and we're not going to support the game playing itself for you, so none of that. So any tips on crafting gear? So for normal gear, when you're crafting affixes, for normal quality gear, it makes it easier to get higher rolls once you're making it higher quality and higher end, making it into higher end gear, essentially. So that's one of the tips we can give. What is DPS? How can you not know that? Well, okay, that's damage per second. Does the game pause? Is the game pausable? Yes, like many other single-player games, the game pauses when you access your inventory, go into your talents, level up, do whatever you want. So basically, when you're severely damaged and you're about to take a fatal hit, you can, I don't know, click on your inventory, take a look at the last moments of your life, reflect on your life choices, and then die. So there's that option, yes. is there auto pickup in-game in this game? And well, yes, that is a convenience option that we did have added, although we don't really consider it auto since it's one of the features of most dungeon crawlers nowadays. You can have auto pickup be done by your pet. It's supported. And the final question is, will the closed beta test be available exclusively through TapTap? And the answer is, unfortunately, due to our deficiency and lacking of friends, we do only have TapTap as our sole platform by which you can get this game. So, I don't know, register an account. It's for free. And that'll be it. That's all the questions we'll be fielding today, but hopefully we can see you guys all soon in our next stream. Hopefully this is just going to be the start of a great journey together. Once again, thank you so much for all of you guys playing our games, tuning into the stream, and just giving us all this love that it just means so much to us. And we love you all. Have a happy new year. Have a good time. See ya.